All right. And is there a way to close that? Yeah. All right. So, as just a brief introduction, I'm here with, my name's Paul Taylor. I'm here with Autumn Belmont. Autumn's working here at the OPI now for, you just had your anniversary, a little over a year. And one of the things we've been working on for the past year or two is a concept termed maintenance of equity. The federal government coined the term in association with when it developed the ARP Act. And what it is, it's actually in the ARP Act under Section 2004. And this meaning is specific to Part C of that particular section of law. So if you ever need to find it, you can actually Google ARP Act 2004C, and it usually takes you there. So if you want to review it, there's another place where you can read about this. It's in a FAQ that's put out by the federal government. We can show you where that link is, or we can share it again if you haven't seen it in the email yet. But what Part C of the 2004, well, what the ARP Act has, this 2004 Part C basically says is the local and state support for schools for current expenditures cannot be reduced over the prior year um, in relationship to both a per pupil ratio, a FTE ratio, and also a financial setting. So what happened is I got on the phone, Autumn and I got on the phone, and then we actually had a Teams meeting with some folks at the U.S. Department of Education. And in that meeting, they asked about what we're doing about this 2004 Part C. And I said, well, the school districts have to maintain effort or equity for the amount of funding that they expended per pupil and per FTE and per expenditure over the prior year. And they said, well, that's nice. What are you going to do about it? we're like, what, really? So in the conversation, they said, look, we want to help you. Want to make sure all the schools get to keep all their ARP-backed funds. And we want you to work with the schools individually and get them to either come into compliance or fill in a, what is it called, Autumn? It's Appendix B of the FAQ. It's an exception letter, so you would have to come up with a reason for why you didn't maintain equity at the school level and write a letter on your letterhead and fill in this Appendix B and send the letter and the Appendix B to the OPI. You send it to myself or Autumn, and that we will gather these up and send them to the federal government for hopeful approval, which would give you an exception so that there's reasons. So that's what came out of the conversation with Autumn and I, with a few folks over at US Ed. So the meeting today is in response to that, so that we could have like sort of a group conversation. But I'm going to let Autumn take over pretty soon. For the most part, Autumn's our champion right now. She went through the data that we had provided to the US Ed on this topic and did an informal analysis of the data. She also went out to across the country, or yeah, I guess I know where you got it, probably off the FAQ website area in the US Ed, where there's other states that are going through this process, and there's some acceptance letters for these exceptions. And so she's sort of spied on what other states are doing for some of their schools. Is that a fair way to put it? So there's sort of a twofold thing I want to do here, if it's okay. If Autumn doesn't mind, maybe you could share the reasons that we've gathered for possible reasons. Like I said, we did an unofficial analysis. So we came up with a bunch of possible reasons. And then Autumn went through all the schools that are involved in possible not maintaining equity and actually categorized them in groupings that these reasons could possibly apply to. And then hopefully after we have this conversation, maybe you guys would want to chime in and we could come up with a plan going forward. I'll stop talking now. Go for it, Autumn.
Okay, and so we did send this possible explanation list to you guys with the email for this meeting. Now, obviously, quite a few of these we cannot see if this is maybe what happened at your school. It's something that only you guys will know. But we put them on the list anyway because it at least gives you guys some place to look instead of just hunting blindly. We can go over this. If you do want me to go over this, Paul, or you want me to go right into the per school one?
Well, let's do it this way so we don't have to punish them for too long. Right. So, right, Autumn and I sat, and mainly Autumn came up with a potential list of reasons why a district wouldn't maintain equity at the school code level. And some of these are kind of glaringly obvious to us, and that yet we came up with as many ideas as possible so that it would help you at your district level or your district to look at your schools and say, well, does this apply to my situation or does it not? So yeah, why don't you, do you have access to the Excel that has the yeses and nos for who maintained equity and who doesn't? Or do you want me to try to find it and pull it up?
I have it.
Not your calendar, not that. Just kidding.
It's in my email.
It is.
Because I think it's on the one that the Department of Ed sent us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the guy.
So
So
what
yeah, go for it.
what we did is we looked at these schools, which either did not maintain fiscal or like financial or FTE equity. And this helped us come up with reasons. And then I don't know if this spreadsheet is much of mine.
Yeah, just for you guys, if you have a copy of this, we didn't create this spreadsheet. It's a US Ed department spreadsheet.
So then we looked at whether you guys maintain student and staff equity, or fiscal, financial equity. And I did my own analysis on the side to see how much staff you lost, so how many FTE you lost or how many FTE you gained each year, and that, and as well as like your increase or decrease in enrollment between the years, and that helped us come up with some of these reasons. Loss of staff, recruitment and retention issues, student-teacher ratio changes, large grade shifts from elementary to high school. And then, of course, we'll get into like your TFS reporting, and maybe there was a change in how you reported certain things. And then some fund shifting with ESSER funds. Here's the changes in reporting. But of course, you know, like I said, not all of these we're going to be able to see, but we tried to see as best we can from the data you guys submit to us when you submit your TFS each year and with enrollment and everything.
Yeah, so let's hop into your analysis by school. Like, so all the schools that Autumn just showed that have red basically says you didn't maintain equity in some way, staffing equity, enrollment, funding per enrollment equity. And so what we did then is, or what Autumn did really, is put this list together where she's unofficially looking at your data to determine possible reasons for why maybe that could be. If you have something different, it's on you guys to write your letter the way you need to, but yep, go for it.
So the first thing I looked at were our small schools. I looked at some of the small school exceptions that the feds had approved for other states. And I felt confident that these three districts, the schools, so Elrod, Big Sky, Glendale, and then Sealy Swan High School, that they fit in the small school exception that the feds have allowed. And that's because for a small size, like Elrod had a 30% increase in enrollment between the 2 years. And I mean, the volatility of enrollment and everything and how that affects the school for small schools, there's a very good chance that that would affect whether or not you can maintain your equity. So that can be a reason for, and so like I broke it out here, these schools, they have such a small size that seems a pretty good place to start if there's no other reason.
Right, so there's a base cost with operating a school, and if you had 5 kids in the classroom and then you had 25 kids in the classroom, there's a possibility that you wouldn't hire another teacher, and so the expenditure may not increase with an increase of enrolled students. And so we see that as a larger impact in smaller schools because, you know, it costs a certain amount of money to have your foundation. You got to heat it, you got to have, you know, supplies, you got to have lighting, and you have to have instruction. And small changes in enrollment can throw your per pupil expenditure off. Am I explaining that right, Autumn? Yeah. So, okay.
I agree. So, that affected 4 of the schools we were looking at. And then some of these schools are also on this list here. Oh, I did say it. Okay. The next one that we saw were recruitment and retention issues. We know that's an issue all over the state right now. Actually, like all over the country. If you lose a teacher and you're not able to hire a qualified teacher for that position, you're just going to shift those kids to other classrooms and increase your classroom sizes. And if you're not able to keep, because we had some schools that lost like 9 FTE, well, of course, you're going to end up spending less than if you were not able to recruit 9 more FTE. So that's something to look at for these schools. That could be another reason for those as well. And like I said, there were some schools that didn't have an FTE maintenance of equity issue. They were able to maintain their student staff ratios. But then other schools had both a financial and an FTE issue. So that's something to consider. So that one's pretty self-explanatory. If you have less FTE, you're obviously spending less on salaries. You good on that one, Paul? And then we'll get into the unique one.
Yeah, I don't, you know, like, so if you noticed on the sheet, Autumn showed in the very beginning, it has yeses and nos, the red yeses. I guess I'm reiterating, I'm just making sure that there's clarity. Yeah, go ahead, bring it up. I saw you hovering over it. So it says, yeah, so it's that Y there. It says, maintain staffing equity is one of the levels of this maintenance of equity 2004 Part C, and where those no's are, you would have to create an explanation as to why you dropped the number of staff. And one of the reasons could be, well, I let a few staff go, or we reorganized our district for particular reasons. And so one reason could be, well, I'm just not able to find teachers or something to that effect. And then these other columns here, it's the student ratio to expenditures. So go for it, Autumn. I'm sorry to keep butting in. I hope you don't mind.
Yeah. We can now start getting a little more into the per school, maybe reasons. That the one I do want to focus on before we maybe take questions from you guys. The Gallatin High School, the newer high school out there. It of course fits into the enrollment. They had a 37% rise in enrollment between the 2 years and stuff, but also because they are such a new school, they would probably fit into the exception for exceptional and uncontrollable circumstances that prevented them from maintaining equity because of the volatility and enrollment and stuff. Because they are still new. They opened in, I think, 2020 is what I have written. So that one is unique to just them. But that is what the feds have typed up on a couple others with unique circumstances, which they consider exceptional or uncontrollable circumstances is how they word it. So that was the one that didn't really fit anywhere else, but did have its own reason for maybe why it wasn't able to maintain equity. Okay. Does anybody have any questions before we? Because some of these ones that we're going to go over, we kind of went over up here as to why they could have a certain exception to pursue or.
So Lacey just wrote something, but I gotta figure out how to look at it.
She wants to know if they have one or more, if they have more than one school in their list, do they need to write a letter and complete appendix B for each individual school? Yeah.
Yeah, I think you do.
Every school could have a different reason.
Right. I mean, I guess you could combine it in one letter as long as you clearly addressed each individual circumstance identified separate from that of the other. Yeah, I imagine we would accept just one letter. Because I'm looking at the appendix B that you would have to fill in as well, and it says Ellie name and state. Yeah, I think you can get away with one letter as long as you clearly identify that here's my district and here are the three schools and here are the reasons for each one independently. Yeah, that would work probably fine.
I'll start with the schools that we kind of addressed up top that maybe had a little not obvious, but things we could see on our side of possible reasons. The first one will be Elrod. They need an FTE and financial explanation for why they didn't maintain equity. And again, they are what I think we can consider a small school based on federal standards. And they did have an increase of enrollment of 30%. And the reason I have here is kind of some wording from some of the federal letters that the volatility in enrollment at small schools is an exceptional and uncontrollable circumstance that would prevent them from meeting it at that specific school. And they did, and you guys did hire 2.5 FTE to accommodate the increase in enrollment. But if you needed more because you would lost some, I mean, the recruitment and retention issue is going to be an issue for all the schools with FTE issue problems. Sealy Swan High School. This one was there was another example like this for a high school in a federal letter as well, where one specific high school in the district didn't fit into the average high school for that district. So I looked at, there's 4 high schools in the Missoula school district, and the other 3 averaged 1,200 students, where Sealy Swan has less than 100. So you can use the small size for sure, but also just the comparison between your high school and the districts on average will mean there's so much more volatility in what you guys do. yeah, 90 something to 1,200.
So the second paragraph, the one right under your blinking cursor, says, this is a small school where maintenance of faculty calculation do not result in meaningful information about resource and availability. Is that language that was copied from some of the suggested letters that the Department of Ed had approved?
Yes.
Yeah,
And then I just changed it to fit this high school here
yeah,
at the bottom. And I think honestly, that's the best bet if we can use some of their language that they've already approved. Because a school with under 100 students, it's not gonna be meaningful information. It's
got it.
just not, no matter how
Okay.
you look at it.
Okay, so once again, if you came in late, what Autumn did was she went and checked some approval letters from other states and saw if the logic fits some of your school districts, and she's borrowing those reasons for this so that it's just hints for you. If you want to use them, you can. So keep on keeping on.
Okay, and then we're gonna hit the same issues with Browning Elementary for Big Sky and Glendale. Again, tiny schools, whatever information we were able to show, it's just not a good example. So we're gonna use that same where the calculation doesn't result in meaningful information. That's what I did as well. Again, those ones were all pretty much similar.
Okay.
Because of the size of the school. And then we get into, sorry, one second. Oh, for a few of the Great Falls schools, it was FTE decreases, with increases in enrollment. So recruitment and retention issues, loss of staff, lack of qualified staff, no need to hire new staff because your enrollment didn't increase enough that you needed to replace the staff that either left or there were structure changes. Those ones are just school's gonna have to look at that case by case. Same with Great Falls High School, they lost 9 FTE. Again, it could just be no luck in hiring new staff or no need. We can't see that other than that you lost the 9 FTE and had a 4% increase in enrollment. And then here for Helen Elementary Broadwater School, that's what I put as well. Because of recruitment and retention issues, the loss of these FTE decreased per pupil expenditures. I mean, that's kind of what I was looking at when I was looking at those. But again, that's all you guys. These were just examples.
Yep. So we're just spitballing those as possible ideas. Yep.
Below this line, we get into the schools that we weren't able to find the same kind of examples for on why there was a decrease in per pupil spending. There's these are the schools that are really going to have to look at that list of possible explanations we attach to the email because there's nothing on our side that we can see.
Right. Oh, this is terrific work, Autumn. Yeah, and I know it took you some considerable time, and I think we're all appreciative of the work you've done here. So the next steps is, are we okay to talk about next steps, Autumn? Yeah. All right. So really what it comes down to is it appears as though some of the districts have schools in them that the feds identified as not maintaining equity. Like I said, the meeting that we had with them was to determine a way to come up with filling in, writing an exception letter and filling in that Appendix B to say that your district is requesting an exception, and that Autumn has gone through the trouble of identifying possible reasons. We came together, she and I, multiple times. We came up with that list of the 14 things. Maybe you want to flash that up there again. And then what I'd like to do is I'd like to take the rest of the meeting time to somehow talk about if we missed anything, if you guys know that we're way off the mark, or if you understand your marching orders, which essentially are fill out Appendix B of the FAQ for the schools that didn't maintain equity, write a letter with reasons that hopefully can be approved by the US Ed, and send them to myself or Autumn, and we'll compile them to be sent to the US Ed. And then we'll work with you one-on-one if necessary. But what can we do to help you all to get through this year for this?
Autumn, this is Lance and Brian in Great Falls. How are you?
Good.
Good. Hey, would there be a time to just set up a quick Teams meeting with you? Is there a template of a letter we can fill out? Ours is pretty easy. We just can't find staff to fill these classroom positions. Like, we're actively hiring and recruiting, and we're getting no applicants. So it's not that we don't want to hire them, we just can't. Is there a form template letter that we can go through, fill it out, and then do the appendixes on our side and then share them with you before we turn it in?
There is not.
Nothing? Okay.
This is all going to be a letter written independently by the schools. We haven't found any. Yeah.
You
Okay.
know what we keep finding? We keep finding the response letters from the US Ed showing the acceptance of the reason, but nowhere have we been able to find a form letter that you could use to put forward. So yeah, maybe that's something we would all collectively dream up, or yeah, if somebody doesn't mind biting the bullet, and maybe we could collectively come up with one that works and then share it. I don't know. Anybody else? You're also quiet. This is unusual.
Autumn and Paul, it's Mike Waterman and Bozeman. I'll just say thanks. I know you guys have done a lot of work that you didn't have to do for all of us, and kind of leading us down the path. So thank you for your efforts and thoughtfulness helping us work through this. That's all.
Honestly, all the thanks goes to Autumn. She championed this thing almost from the get-go, and she's put hours and probably days and days of work into this thing. So it's very helpful. Anybody else have anything more?
Yeah, it's Kevin over in Butte. Just say thank you. And then I didn't look at everybody's, but I know ours is like a minimal amount. And I'm just anticipating it might be like a teacher that retired and we brought in another teacher that made less money. Probably a situation for some other people that have just like a minimal amount too.
Right. Okay, so your directive, if I could give one, for your ARP funds, is to write a letter, identify the purpose for why you didn't maintain equity. If you need access to any of these documents, I mean, we attached them to this meeting request. But if you can't find them, reach out to us. We'll get you what you need for your school. If you want to have independent meetings with Autumn or myself, ask for them. We'll set them up. What am I missing? Anything at all?
No, I think that covered everything we wanted to do.
Okay. So let's find a way out of this and get you guys get the support you need and get yourselves these exceptions. Next year will be the last year for doing this, I believe, unless they do something other crazy new law. But oh, did I say crazy new law?
Autumn, when's the letter due?
Didn't we say 30 days, Paul, after this meeting is when we'd like to start seeing them come in?
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't think it's statutory in any way, but it would be nice just to nip this in the bud and be done with it if possible. Anybody else? Okay. Well, then I'm going to say that this concludes the meeting unless anybody else has anything more. Appreciate your time and we'll work through it together somehow. Thanks, everybody. Okay. Bye-bye. Bye, Autumn.